Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined today by an awesome candidate running for Manhattan District Attorney, Tahanie Aboushi. How you doing, Tahanie?
Great. Thank you for having me, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for taking some time to talk with me. I first became aware of your candidacy, I think through Sean King. You appeared on his program. He's been real supportive. I know you have some just incredible endorsements. Cynthia Nixon, former gubernatorial candidate, Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed, Representative Rashida Tlaib, Linda Sarsour, Real Justice PAC, Sean King's PAC. Just incredible people backing you. And you have just an amazing progressive and I hate to overuse that word, but a bold agenda, people-centered agenda. And I want to get into that, a little bit, but, you've been a civil rights attorney for 10 plus years. And I want to ask, what animated you into that career of justice, earlier in life? What got you down this path?
Yeah, I think, the why and our intention and why we do things is a really important place to start. And for me, criminal justice reform is personal. The fight for accountability and the fight to balance the scales of justice is one that started at 14 when my father was sentenced to 22 years in prison. And overnight, my mother became a single parent of 10 kids. And this went down in Brooklyn. And there was a moment in the courtroom where the judge had interrupted the proceedings and he asked the prosecutor, "What are you going to do with all these kids?" Pointing to my 9 siblings and I in the pews of his courtroom. And without hesitating, she said, "They're not my problem." And she kept it moving. And that was the moment I realized the system didn't see us as a family or as human beings, and that they were in the business of throwing families away. And so that really lit a fire in me to stand up against the systems of authority that can do these things to our families. And to really stand by families like mine to make sure that our rights are protected and we're not taken advantage of in the system. And that we are focusing on justice, not convicting at all costs or not giving special treatment to a badge or a bank account, but really focusing on stability and safety and success of all of our families, regardless of their status in our communities.
Right. Wow. I mean, that's such a powerful personal story. And, so through your career as a civil rights attorney, can you talk about some of those, like some accomplishments? Like I imagine, being an advocate for people, like your dad, right? What does that feel like? What have you done? What are you proud of? What can you share about your life experiences as a civil rights attorney?
Absolutely. I mean, I have been defending against discrimination, excessive force, police violence, racism. I represent victims of sexual assaults, especially children. And for me, as a civil rights attorney, I'm in it for the long haul. This is not a job. I don't take on cases. I take on causes. And I work aggressively to make structural change. And I've been able to do that within both the NYPD and our fire department. With the fire department, we were able to change a policy and challenge it that required firefighters to be clean shaven, regardless of the fact that African-American firefighters suffered from a condition called PFB, which essentially disfigured their face. And so the FDNY was pretty okay with thinning the ranks of Black firefighters, a so-called sacrifice in the name of this policy. And we called them out on it, and we're fighting to change it. We've actually won on the district court level, and we're working to make sure that that change stays. Same thing for the NYPD. People in NYPD custody that observed religious practices were taunted and mocked and violated. And so we changed their patrol guide to ensure that those who observe religious practices, that their rights are protected throughout post-arrest processing. And it wasn't free game to just take advantage of people because now they were in the custody and control of law enforcement. Right. And we do a lot of that across the board. The Department of Education, other city agencies, big corporations that take advantage of their employees. And we identify those uneven power sources and we hold them accountable. And I'm very proud to have been doing that for a long time in partnership with our families and our communities.
Yeah, amazing. So, I want to ask, obviously you do not take corporate PAC money, right?
Right.
Otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you basically, but,
Right.
you're a people funded campaign. So I want to just pull up your website. It's tahaniforda.com. So obviously grassroots campaign donations go a long, long way. Your primary day is June 22nd. It's a bit of a crowded field, but of course, no one's as awesome as Tahanie in this race. So, go to TahanieForDA.com, make a donation, sign up to volunteer. I'm assuming you have text banking, phone banking, and so forth.
Absolutely. Definitely join us. We have an event tonight at 7. You're more than welcome to jump in. We'll be doing kind of a state of the campaign, talking about our policies, talking about our field plans and our voter contact. And we're very busy and we're ahead of the game.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a campaign video that you put out on your website. There's a video section. There's all kinds of really great clips in there. And I had a hard time pulling which one, right? So there's one you did from January of last year in Harlem that I want to close with. It's about 2 minutes. So stick around for that at the end. So given that you're no corporate PAC money, can you talk a little bit about, like, traditionally, who are the big donors? Where is the big money in this race? Like, what's the, what are the industries? What's the state of the race in terms of, I know real estate lobby tends to be, at a municipality level, right? So where's the big money coming from in the Manhattan DA?
Yeah, a lot of it is Wall Street. We have a lot of wealthy communities, wealthy families here in the city that can influence and buy the election. And we already see that, whether it's the real estate industry, law enforcement, corporate PACs, or this big Wall Street money, it's already flooded the race. And that's what we're up against. I continue to say that I would not give special treatment to anyone, and I would put no badge or bank account above the law. That's something the incumbent has had trouble with, taking campaign donations from defense attorneys who are appearing in his office in active cases. Wow. And so, it's a big problem. And, Wall Street is a big industry that largely goes unpunished. People of color have been made to be the face of crime in our city. And when we talk about balancing the scales of justice, we have to look also at white collar crime, wage theft, Ponzi schemes, mortgage fraud, things that have brought our country and our families to its knees over and over again. And so that's what makes also the Manhattan DA's office so important, is because of all the major interests locally and globally that are under our jurisdiction.
Wow. And, you talk about money buying justice, about not putting a bank account above that, I think are there Trump cases in your, was it Harvey Weinstein in your district? Like, what's?
Yep. Harvey Weinstein, Epstein, the previous Trump investigation from 2016. All of that came through Manhattan.
Right. Wow. So imagine having an unbought and unbossed DA on that beat, right? So what a difference that would make. Amazing. So again, TahanieForDA.com. Let's talk a little bit about, the flip side of it, sort of the over-reliance of prisons and jails, the prison to pipeline, school to prison pipeline, and so forth. Can you talk about that in your district and what you would hope to, change in terms of, from the district attorney office about that?
Absolutely. One of the things I do is I represent a lot of children, especially in suspension hearings. And I get it. When my father was incarcerated, my youngest sibling at the time was 6 years old. I was around 14. And so I know what it's like to navigate those instabilities, both in the house and outside the house, and to look for a place where you belong. And all of the negative influence that a parent fears their child will fall into is always readily available to us. Right. Your thought process, the fears, the pressures, and all of that is criminalized. We need to be meeting our communities with as many resources as possible. We can't incarcerate our way out of these instabilities. Prosecution is inherently harmful. It does make bad situations worse. And it really, if ever, gets to the root causes of crimes to address the instabilities. And that's what I want to face here, right? I want to talk about mental illness, substance use disorder, homelessness, poverty, domestic violence in a way that is preventative, in a way that actually gets into the gutter of things and addresses these root causes by investing resources and partnering with our community-based organizations to get people consistent quality help until they're through their situations. Because right now the system is reactionary. We come in after the fact. Our only tool is a hammer, so everything's a nail. And then we walk away without any accountability for what happens to that person, that victim, or that family once this process is over.
Yeah.
And we know that the decision a prosecutor makes goes well beyond the four corners of that office. It's in our homes, and it dictates our direction and for our future and the obstacles and opportunities that would come our way. So this is something for me that is not only deeply important, but I want to get into it. I want to get into the details. I want a long-term committed relationship to making sure that our people are stable and safe.
Yeah. And that would presumably involve some systemic change, right? I imagine there are a lot of people on staff currently entrenched and so forth. So you would be bringing, a bit of a fresh face, so to speak, right?
Absolutely. Every district attorney from the beginning of this office has been a white male. We've never even elected a female or a person of color to the seat. And for me, because I have that 360 understanding, not only from a personal experience, but having fought for so long against the intricacies of the system, the loopholes, the interplay between our NYPD and the DA's office and our city agencies, the fact that I see these instabilities up close and personal, and I work on alleviating them on a daily basis. This is what we need for the office. This is what we need to prevent crime, focus on rehabilitation, prevent recidivism, and again, make sure that we're working hand in hand with the community who is also on the ground dealing with these things every day.
Right. Yeah. The other point about the contrast between sort of the white collar, paying to get away with crimes. The flip side of that is cash bail. And you're a proponent of ending cash bail. Talk about how detrimental that really is, and what the impact that, it's not just, case by case, it's the family, it's generational. Talk about the impacts of cash bail.
Absolutely. We're proud to be endorsed by Khalif Browder's family. Khalif is unfortunately one of many victims of the cash bail system, which puts a price on your presumption of innocence. And it holds you hostage, and it jeopardizes your housing stability, employment stability, your mental and emotional health. And it's a waiting game until the courts and the prosecutors get around to remembering you exist. And by then, so much damage is done, and you've served so much time in prison that it coerces a plea. And just so everybody looks the other way. And we can't continue to do that. These systems, the cash bail system, is inherently racist. It preys on low-income Black and Latino New Yorkers. And the point of bail is to ensure people are coming back to court, which people, the research has shown, on their own are already coming back to court. The obstacles that interfere with that: transportation, getting time off from jobs, having the means to get to court, having the representation to get to court and navigate what these multiple appearances entail. And that's what we need to do. If we want to continue to make sure that people are coming back to court, let's clear those obstacles out of their way and ensure that we're actually working together to resolve the case, not playing all these tricks to say, look, all this can go away if you just take a plea. We don't even have to talk about what did or didn't happen, just take the plea. And so it's these coercive logistical conversations that are playing around with our presumption of innocence, our constitutional right. So that's why I'm a proponent to end cash bail and instead ensure that we have resources in place to make sure people continue to come back to court.
That's great. And I would assume one of the motivators, bolstering cash bail is the private prison system. Like, there's a for-profit motive to hold people.
Yeah. And look, I spent 20 years visiting my father in prisons all across the East Coast. These are unhealthy, unsanitary, and violent places. I mean, Khalif Browder in Rikers was assaulted by correction officers and other incarcerated people. This is not a place that is conducive to growth. And we know that science tells us our brains continue to develop through the age of 25. And so the younger we are incarcerating people and putting them in this environment for long term, we're allowing them to be manipulated and influenced by what's going on in our prisons and jails. And it's unfortunate. It's hard to come back from. And because we incarcerate people longer, they come out having no job training, no, not even having IDs to get jobs, right? No financial support, no path forward. And they just become now our homeless issue, right? Or unemployment issue or a mental health issue. And that's what I mean by we exacerbate these underlying conditions with prison and prosecution. And it's time we get past that and we start going beneath the surface and committing to addressing these instabilities through consistent quality resources.
Here, here. Yeah, you talk about exacerbation and so forth, and you said earlier of everything. If you have a hammer, right? Talk about police accountability, right? They shouldn't necessarily be tasked with cleaning up homelessness and so forth, right? Can you talk about your position on police accountability?
Absolutely. Part of my work in doing excessive force cases, I know how the NYPD operates quite thoroughly, from their patrol guide to how their legal teams respond, how the city responds, our court systems, and all of that interplay. I'll do something that I don't often do, but the head of the police union said two very important things. One, he said, the NYPD has more contact with New Yorkers than any other city agency. That's a big problem. Yeah. And the second thing he said is that every time a city agency fails, you throw police at it, and we got to come clean up your mess. And I said, you know what? That's exactly the right thing to say. That's the problem. We shouldn't be throwing police at all of these issues that our city agencies should be handling. The police shouldn't be having more contact with New Yorkers than our social service organizations, our Department of Education, our mental health programs, substance use disorder programs. People should know that these resources are available to them before they know that they'll have a run-in with an officer or with the prosecution system. And that's the over-reliance that has allowed for these exorbitant budgets within the NYPD. I mean, when we started doing vaccinations here in New York City, the mayor said, we're going to have NYPD go to our NYCHA houses and start vaccinating people. Right. And in my mind, I thought, first of all, these communities are traumatized by police violence. There's almost no trust there. Right. But secondly, of all the medical professionals we have in our city that we could train, who are trained, who already are certified, that we can hire to do this, we're instead going to pay NYPD officers overtime to go into our communities and administer vaccinations. Right. That's the default response that is almost like an addiction that we need to wean our city agencies off of. And so I think we have just an over-reliance on police and prosecution for things that should be dealt with through public health agencies and organizations. And I will make this office a partner with those agencies to say, look, take the money that I'm getting in my office to police and prosecute these social inequities. And I need you, community-based organization XYZ, to work with me and to make sure we're addressing these root causes. People have these consistent responses. We have victim services, we have restorative justice, and we're taking these preventative measures. And that's going to ensure that not only are we working together, but again, we're addressing these root causes to prevent these things from happening over and over again.
Right. Yeah. So what are the biggest obstacles of that? Is it police unions? Is it just entrenchment? What are the biggest obstacles to get to? Because like you said, he made those 2 points and those are the exact 2 points, right? But it's approach. So what are the biggest obstacles to get to the way you describe, which is righteous and just?
I mean, I think it takes somebody that is not beholden to them, someone that is not a typical politician that navigates the typical waters and whose circle is just people who are worried about what these unions are going to say. Because for me, what has kept me up at night the last 10 years is being in people's living rooms across the city, seeing these instabilities and destabilization up close and personal, visiting people in jail because their parent can't take another day off of work, seeing what the household looks like as it falls apart. And it's all reminiscent of what I went through as my father was going through his incarceration. And so for me, I've held officers accountable as a civil rights lawyer. I don't worry about buckling to that pressure. I think that these are positions of public trust. This is an agency and authority that can not only carry a weapon, but can discharge that weapon, can restrict your freedom, can introduce you to the justice system, the prosecution system, according to their terms and their narrative. And they have all the resources at their disposal. And on the other side is you, a civilian, with whatever you have in your pocket.
Right.
It's just that uneven balance of power and the consequences that come from it. It's too high and too dangerous to allow it to happen without any accountability. And so I've put out a policy of very thorough police accountability unit, open discovery policy that is not only going to ensure that we hold officers accountable, but also prosecutors who engage in misconduct and cover up bad policing. We're also going to collect data and make it available to our partners and ensure that we are identifying patterns and practices. And we're going to join our office as a bully pulpit with our advocates to ensure that we are supporting these reforms and changes to the NYPD and the DA's office.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I want to ask a little bit about, there is a movement of, sort of more progressive leaning DAs and having success. Tiffany Caban ran in Queens. I think she was a whisker away, but, Larry Krasner is probably the best known example, right, in Philadelphia, and he's been there for maybe 2 years now, over a year. Looking at what he's done, it's not dissimilar to what your aspirations are and so forth, your platform, and he's had some challenges with the police unions and so forth, right? What have you learned from other races, or what has inspired you? What have you, this doesn't work and that works? Like, what have you picked up from other sort of progressive leaning DAs?
Don't compromise. We have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. When power like this is changing hands, it's not supposed to be seamless. And so when people get concerned, you're going to disrupt the status quo. My response is that's the whole point. We cannot afford more copy and paste district attorneys. We have to start addressing the root causes of crimes. We have to do it from a holistic public health approach. And we have to let the community in on what's going on because it's impacting the community. And so that's what I think is the most important thing. And let the naysayers, let the opponents, let your Post and Fox and Union folks, like the PBA, come out and fearmonger. And that's okay, because we've been on the other end of it for so long that nothing has changed. And so it's time for them to be on the other side. And while they're fanning the flames, we are getting to work with as many agencies as possible and dedicating as many resources as possible. So I think consistency, being headstrong, being focused on public safety and public stability is the best thing we can do to make sure that we're bringing this vision to light and we're making it happen together.
Awesome. Yeah, like I'm assuming there's a lot of fear mongering about you in your candidacy, but we don't need to get into that. But I'm a proponent that everything is motivated either by fear and love, right? So righteousness and justice is motivated by love. Fear mongering is going to come at you regardless, right? So, like you said, we can build this movement. So it's TahanieForDA.com. Again, I'm sharing the website. Make a donation, volunteer. Races like this, every little donation makes a huge difference. So, or phone banking can make a difference if you don't have money, right? It didn't begin and end with Trump and whatever, right? So,
That's right.
there are races that can be won, and, Tahanie's is one, TahanieForDA.com. There are a couple issues in your platform that, that don't get talked about widely enough, right? The one that has gotten a little bit of ink, if you will, is the decriminalization of sex work, right? So that is a progressive position, but it's not one that generally people lead with because we're not there yet, right? We talk about Medicare for all and all that kind of stuff, but that's one that's in the ideology, but it's not one we generally lead with. So I like that you have that in your platform and you're vocal about it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The sex work is work, and it's a consensual engagement between two adults. And the pursuit is usually where we're preventing sex traffickers or we're identifying them. And we should be, right? And we have plenty of laws on the books to address that. Right. But when you talk about sex work, it's a different ballgame. It's a different group of people. That's a way that people make a living. And to criminalize it is to do two things, right? One, not only cut off their ability to make an income, to have an income, but secondly, to trap them in a system that criminalizes them, cuts them out of employment opportunity, educational opportunity, housing opportunities, and stability. And we, again, do it under the guise that, you're being saved. But who are the people that are being arrested and prosecuted? It's typically either the people who are engaging it or victims who want to get out. And so as we try to get to the traffickers, but we've criminalized everything leading up to it, we have no cooperation or safety from those who are on that first level, who are the low-hanging fruit, who make up the bread and butter of these prosecutions. And so without that cooperation, you're never going to get to that top of the pyramid where these really abusive practices and the trafficking is happening. And then the other side to it is the NYPD has an entire vice squad, right, whose sole purpose is to target sex work. And there's just been horrific abusive practices coming out of there where they have abused their power and privilege for sexual favors over time to meet their quotas and to just go have fun, never catching traffickers, but always doing entrapment type cases, really ruining people's lives in the name of we're saving victims. And that's just not how it plays out. And so we need to decriminalize sex work fully, not the Nordic model, but completely. So that way we do have that engagement and access to those who want to get out, but also those who are engaging as consenting adults to allow them to continue that practice.
Yeah. Boy, yeah, thanks for being vocal on that. Like I said, that's not an issue that's gets as much attention as it deserves. So, thank you for being, a proponent of that, and Godspeed. And, should you win the office, Godspeed, right? I want to ask about, there's a lot of, we talk about sort of systemic racism and so forth, right? Lately, there's been an uptick in, Asian AAPI hate crimes and so forth. Can you talk about, what you would hope to do, to stave that off as DA?
Yeah, look, I'm a Palestinian Muslim woman. I'm sitting down, but I'm 6 feet when I'm standing up. And I'm no stranger to hate crimes. The president banned Muslims. I was in JFK airport for 3 or 4 days straight, getting people's loved ones out of CBP detention. And it's a horrible, violating, scary feeling. But there's hate at its core. Educational hate, things that we are trained, ingrained, and taught, things that our president spewed, things that our representatives have spewed. And so when you bring in crime and punishment and prosecution, you're not educating people. You're not teaching them to not hate. You're not teaching them about understanding culture and differences in a positive way. All you're doing is, hey, here's something bad happen. All I can offer you is incarceration, but I can't guarantee that this will never happen to you again. Or that even if this person finishes out the sentence, right, that they're going to think differently. And so hate crime statutes serve as enhancements that contribute to longer sentences. Again, nothing to do with public safety or education. And so this is an opportunity for restorative justice. This is where we ensure that we are centering the voices of victims, focusing on how they prefer and need to be healing, and then use it as an opportunity for education and engagement.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, I could talk to you all day long. There's just one other thing that I wanted to ask about. And like I said, I'm going to close on one of your campaign videos. So, please watch that. The primary is June 22nd. I heard you talk about pretrial punishment. And for those not in the know, how would you do, what is that? And, what can be done about pretrial punishment?
Yeah, pretrial punishment starts with really bad policing, where there's faulty policing, police misconduct, manipulation of evidence that just comes in as automatically charged. And so there needs to be a vetting system in place that reviews these arrests to understand, what is the foundation of these claims? And is this something that should be prosecuted, or does it need to be declined to prosecute? And we have a very thorough policy on our website explaining all the different steps that we would take in that response. The second thing is cash bail, right? Yeah. Is to make sure that we force somebody in incarceration, although they're technically innocent until proven guilty. And when it comes time to resolving the case, sometimes it's like you have time served. When you shouldn't even have had to have been in that position in the first place. Right. And then the other part of that is really like a hearing and trial tax, which is that if you refuse to take a plea and you force a prosecutor to have hearings, preliminary hearings, or to take the case to trial, then it's revenge. And so where you would have been offered no jail time or 3 years or 1 year, once hearing starts or once a trial starts, it's now full maximum. They need to draw blood. And so for me, my commitment is whatever deal is offered from day one is always going to be available, regardless of the stage of the case, because people shouldn't be criminalized or coerced into giving up their constitutional rights and having a fair fight in protecting their innocence and balancing the scales of justice.
God, it's so insane that we even have to talk about that, right? That's so maddening. Yeah. So again, TahanieForDA.com. Your primary is on June 22nd.
Yeah.
Share this video, like all of Tahanie's socials, join her event here at the top of the hour, right? Anything that we didn't hit on that you want to make mention of?
No, I think, look, this is going to be probably one of the most important races happening this year. This is one of the most probably powerful DA's offices in the country. And it's time we bring it up to speed with the advancements of other DAs running. The decisions, again, that this prosecutor will make, that the district attorney makes, will impact not only the lives of today's New Yorkers, but those for generations to come. And they will single-handedly do it, because for this office, you don't need a majority for change. You need a memo. And it's important that we elect someone that has walked in the shoes of those impacted by this office. And that's what I commit to doing. I'm going to make this office transparent, accountable, and collaborative to the public, because it is an emergency and this is urgent. And this is our opportunity to bring change to not only Manhattan, but to a draconian and archaic prosecution system.
Hear, hear. Godspeed. Well, thanks for taking some time to chat with me. Again, I'm going to close with the Tahanie's videos, TahanieForDA.com, June 22nd. Share this with everybody you know in New York, wherever. Like her socials, donate, volunteer. Let's get involved. Let's get her elected. Obviously, what better thing could we have, than an uncorrupted, unbossed, unbought, DA in Manhattan on that beat? Oh my God. Godspeed, Tahanie.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking some time to chat with me. Hopefully I will talk to you again and call you District Attorney Aboushi at some point. I look forward to that day.
Me
Thank
too.
you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You too. Bye.
My name is Tahanie Aboushi, and I'm running to be the next District Attorney of Manhattan. I grew up without ever seeing someone like me on a stage like this. Any working family impacted by the criminal justice system knows that our justice is for sale to special interests. While the Manhattan District Attorney was criminalizing poverty, infamous people like Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump took advantage and wreaked havoc on communities in Manhattan with impunity. And instead of protecting their victims and including them in the decision-making process, the Manhattan District Attorney completely cut them out. Those who have survived the abuses of the criminal justice system should have a say in how the law impacts them. No longer will the district attorney's office be the back-end response to socioeconomic problems. Instead, we are going to partner with community-based organizations to provide front-end services to prevent crime, eliminate pretrial punishment, and ensure equal representation for all. As your district attorney, I will protect all communities from all forms of hate. Hate crimes are on the rise. Yes. Against the Jewish community, the transgender community, people with disabilities, and people of color. But I will build a coalition against all forms of hate, where we will use the strength in our differences to make Manhattan a safer and kinder place. We will protect and support communities targeted by the prison industrial complex. We always decline to trigger federal immigration laws that double punish immigrants. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a change. It's time to center justice around community, not money. And that is why I will never take a penny of corporate PAC money. Real power belongs to real people. And together, we will ensure liberty and justice for all. Thank you.